Welcome back, Rocky Road family. We have an awesome new guest for you to meet today, and her name is Jenny. I'm going to have her introduce herself. So Jenny, tell us who you are.
I am Jennifer Juni, and I am really just like a person with my hand in so many things. I run my main thing is my husband and I actually pastor a church, and then we also I have a company called Impact. It's time to tell people they matter, and it's really just all about, it's a movement and mission to help others tell people that they matter and tell people make sure that people know that they matter. And then I actually also run a photography company that I've had for like almost 13 years now. And I'm a mom and a wife. I'm a mom to two, a 23-year-old who is our adopted son, and then an 8-year-old. And I'm a wife. We've been married like 14 years as of this next in May. And yeah, I think I love really good coffee. I'm a super coffee snob. Big time.
Ooh, that's fun. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of things. You've got a lot of things that we could talk about, and a lot of similarities to us, actually, which is really funny. And it's always kind of cool how like God brings those people together too.
Yes.
So first and foremost, I just want to put it out there. I want you to share about what Impact is, because I think it's awesome. And I would love to talk about your personal life, and we will. But I found it actually through a sponsored ad, I think, on Instagram.
Yep.
Or actually, no.
Was it Christians Who Curse Sometimes?
Yes, that's how I found it.
I wondered.
Okay. Christians Who Curse Sometimes, great Instagram account. I would love to have him on the podcast too sometime. But yes, so I found it that way. And then I was like, oh, this is really interesting. My boss was leaving currently after 20 years at his job. And I was like, this is the perfect gift to get him, because what do you get somebody who's basically built an organization? And we did this impact book. And so for our listeners, just so you know my process, I purchased the book, and then we got an email link that was sent out to all these emails that we compiled. And then everybody answered 3 questions about how this person impacted their life. And then that was it. You just hit submit and it disappears. And all of a sudden, this beautiful bound book appears on your porch, and it just has the whole thing compiled, typed, pictures, neatly printed, and it's called an impact book. And so we gave it to my boss at the time, and he was able to read the impact that he had on, I think we had over 50 submissions for that one. And it was beautiful. He told me he was like more emotional of a boss, and he was like, I can't read one page without crying. So he's like, I read one page at a time. And it's just the stories of all these people. And, you know, for us, we were able to pull back people that knew him from 10 years prior and stuff. And it was just really special for him to have that. And so in his new job, he keeps it on his bookshelf, and it's just there. It's beautiful. And he can read it and see how he impacted people. And, you know, I just think it was like one of the most special things you can give to somebody. So tell me like how you came up with that. Just like put it out there.
I love hearing that story. I always love when I get to hear somebody on the side of having purchased it, and then also getting to hear the response from the person who received it, because it's just so incredible. So the way the impact book came to be was, I actually, in like 2014, we had just had our son, and my husband, we didn't have our adopted son yet. He was adopted when he was about 15. We adopted him in 2000. Well, we fostered him in 2017. We adopted him in 2019. My husband was really just kind of like down and feeling like he was approaching the, you know, ripe old age of 27. And it was, 2014. So we're well past that. But we were just having this conversation, and he was just saying he really didn't feel like he'd done anything to make an impact. And it really like shocked me, because not only is Joel like just this incredible guy, he is like personality wise, he's so loyal and selfless. And he's always, I tell him a lot that he's a better person than me, because he's that person who's like, oh, do you need help with this? I will help with that. And I'm the one at that exact moment that's like, oh, we should probably get going before they ask us to help. And like, not all the time, but I have a few examples of that. And then I'm like, oh, I'm learning from him. So But he's just like, he's always in it. Like he's just there for people. And at that time, you know, he was a husband and a dad, but he was also a pastor, a youth pastor, a soccer coach, a young life leader. I mean, you name it, he was doing it basically.
Mhm.
And so when he was saying he really didn't feel like he'd had an impact, it just kind of, it really shocked me because I
Mm.
didn't see how he couldn't see that. And like, as we've, I mean, I remember in that conversation too, what he was really just talking about too was he had different goals and visions that they hadn't come to fruition. And so I think that
Mm.
he was only seeing those spaces as a space that he would have impact really. And so we kind of ended that conversation. It was a month or two before his birthday. And I just was like, I need him to know. And so I reached out to everyone that I could think of and asked them what their favorite memory was with Joel, how he'd impacted their life, and how he'd helped them. And this was back when Facebook would let you like go to someone's profile and like message all their friends. And so I had gone
Oh,
to his profile and just like messaged everyone. Um,
I
and
actually
now that
never
I
knew
think
that
of
was an option. That's probably a
Oh, it
good thing that
was.
that's not possible
Yeah,
anymore.
it definitely is a good thing, but especially because I didn't like message individually. I messaged them as one giant group. Whoops.
Wow.
So anyways, yes, Facebook now makes that basically impossible. Um, so I had just gotten all of these replies back, and it was so cool to be reading these stories and reading these like memories and just seeing so many things. And I know one specifically that really stuck out to him that we actually even just talked about the other day was in the impact specifically. She said the way that Joel, when you're talking to Joel, you have his attention. Like you don't, he's not distracted. He's not looking for other conversations in the room. Like it doesn't matter what you're talking about. He's there and he's present. And that just really stuck with him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So I put them all together in this book and I actually categorized it where the first section was all memories and the second one was all impact and the last section was all helped. And put that all together for him and gave it to him for his birthday, and he just cried because, and he's not like, he's not afraid to show emotion, but there's not a whole lot, like it takes a lot. He's so even keeled that it takes a lot for him to like really get
Oh.
anywhere emotionally sometimes, or showing it. And so he just started crying and he was like, I had no clue. I didn't know I was doing this. I didn't know this is how people felt. And it just, I was like, you needed to know this, you know? And then a few years later, which I don't know if people have a hard time with like suicide triggers or anything like that. This is a very short snippet of a story, but we had a friend of ours who took their own life. And he was in his mid 40s, and we went to his funeral it was within like a year or so after I'd given Joel this book. We went to his funeral and we pulled in, and there's just at the church, there's just the parking lot is packed, and it was a big parking lot is packed. The streets are lined with cars. And I just turned to Joel and I was like, he had no idea. Like he had no clue how loved he was. And then we're sitting in the funeral, and they start, they invite people to talk, like, hey, share about him. And there was somebody who got up. I mean, like, there's people who were like from the church and stuff, and then this one guy gets up and he said he was the manager at Hardee's in town, and he said that this guy came in like once a week, and he said every time he came in, you knew it was going to be a good day. And just talked about even the impact that this manager at Hardee's, who didn't know him from any other avenue of life, showed up at his funeral to talk about that. And it just, like, to hear all of these and be like, people just don't understand. They don't know. And then I started doing a blog called I had a blog, and I would try to do these posts every week. It didn't last super long because I really get excited about something and then I pitter out on it randomly. But
Me
I
too.
started for Enneagram 7. I don't know if you guys are into the Enneagram or not, but I'm a 7, and I just
Huh.
Ooh, shiny thing. And so,
Awesome.
so I was doing these blogs called Living Eulogy, where I was like, we got to start saying this before the person is dead. Let's just talk about them. And so I would just write how much this person had made a difference in my life. And then it was just really, whoever I wrote about was like, wow, like, thank you. I didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
and then in 2000, I think it was early 2017. It's funny because it's one of those like moments that's just like so wired in my brain as like a core memory. I was literally like, I was just driving and I was at this 4-way stop in my hometown at the time. And all of a sudden I was just like, I need to make the impact book a thing. Like that needs to be something other people can buy. And I was like, I don't even know how to go about this. And so I set up a website. And since I have a photography business that I've had for so long, I have a lot of that like back end. I know how to get things kind of moving. Also, I'm just kind of a serial entrepreneur and I'm always trying to think of, I've had to learn how to be like, I don't need to monetize every hobby I have. Like it's okay to just do the hobby without monetizing it. And so I just started and I was like, yeah, I need to make this a thing, and put together this website. I filed for an LLC. And really actually I was keeping it. I'm usually the person who like blasts it. Like I just blast everything on social. It's just like I just get so excited that I tell everyone. And I was like, this thing I need to just like, I can tell people, but I need to make sure that I just have this ready. Like I want to do this really well. And I was like, okay, I got everything on the back end really ready. And then I set up a Kickstarter because I was like, I want to have the printing capabilities. I want to do the book biting. I want to do everything. So I set up a Kickstarter, and at the time, well, and it still technically is, the official business name is Impact Book LLC. And I set up a Kickstarter, and I was like, anyone that I had told about it, they were psyched. And so I posted this Kickstarter, and I had set it for kind of not an unreasonable amount, but it was high because of all of the equipment I wanted to buy and everything. And then I did everything right according to how you're supposed to get people's attention, how you're supposed, like all the things. We put in all the effort, we did everything. And my husband had actually said, like, I think you should do like an Indiegogo because then you just get the money no matter what it is. But I really felt like, no, I should do this Kickstarter. And it failed. And I was devastated because I had all of these people who had said, like, every person I told about it, they're like, this is an amazing idea. And so I just really assumed that people were going to be like, everyone else who heard about it was going to be like, this is an amazing idea. And it failed. And I was really mad because I had prayed so much about it and felt like God had said, like, do this Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just so upset. And just kind of, it made me, I like paused from it and I was like, okay, I don't want to stop doing this because I know this is like something I need to do. But then it became this question of like, okay, how can we support the business while building up the funds to like stay alive and build up the funds to be able to continue to do stuff. And then it became like, okay, well, we could make like we made an impact book mini, and then we made we had like coffee mugs and some t-shirts that said like, you are seen, you are noticed, you are loved, you matter. And I don't know that we really had much more than that at the time. I think we had a sweatshirt or something like that. And I was just doing those from like a print on demand place. And so it started to like kind of get a little bit of attention, and really slowly just morphed into this realization of like, oh, actually, I really want this to be a movement. Like I want people to say nice things to each other because we're just in this world where there's so much polarization and it just gets worse and worse. And there's so much of the online troll situation where people just, you feel like you can say anything from a keyboard and just rip and tear people apart. And I've seen, like, I'm not huge on TikTok, but like go on there every once in a while when my sister sends me something, or and then sometimes scroll it a little bit. But there's like things I've seen on there that are just heartbreaking, because they're like teenagers destroying each other's friendships, and things that are just, it hurts to watch, because like, oh, how are these people going to be affected for the next 5, 10, 15 plus years of their life because of this moment where someone just destroyed them verbally.
Mhm.
And just really, I started seeing so much more of like, we just need to encourage, we need this movement. We need people to say that they matter. We need people to know they matter. We need people to learn how to, I realize it's really hard for a lot of people to tell someone else that they matter. Like,
Mhm.
even in our impact book submissions, it's really interesting to read the difference between, and I felt it too when I'm like filling out something, the difference between what is, how has Mandy impacted your life, and someone saying Mandy has impacted my life by, versus Mandy, you've impacted my life by. And it feels so much more
Mm.
vulnerable to like say it in a way where I'm writing you this, like, this is for
Mhm.
you.
Right.
And so we started just kind of moving with that. And then I'm one of those people who, like, I really think that, like, I have conversations with God all the time. Like, I feel like God is just always talking to me. And I was mowing one day, and I had been mad for like 2 years that the Kickstarter failed. I was like, that was a
Mm.
grudge I was for sure holding against him.
Can I ask
And
you, I'm
yeah.
sorry, when you say it failed, how does this Kickstarter fail? I'm not
So
as familiar with that
with a
platform.
Kickstarter, you have to make the amount that you want, or it all gets refunded to the backers. You
Got it.
don't get
Okay.
any of it.
Okay.
So with an Indiegogo, that one, you get whatever you raise. And so
Got
that's
it.
why my husband had suggested, like, hey, you should do that. But I really felt like we were supposed to do the Kickstarter.
Okay.
And yeah, so when it failed and we didn't get anything, and then it was
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
So I was just like mowing one day, and I was just kind of like, God, what do you want to talk about? And he said, how about we talk about that Kickstarter? And I was like, ugh, no. So, I mean, fine. And I just really felt like he said, because I felt like, I was like, I asked what we should do, and I felt like you led me to that Kickstarter. And God was just so gently like, you asked which one you should do. Like, you gave me options. You didn't open the floor. You gave me options. And I was like, oh, that's true. And he'll, like, we ask, and he's going to answer. And so realizing, like, him having me do the Kickstarter instead of Indiegogo, which Indiegogo would have brought in enough funds to definitely help a little bit. I was the Kickstarter needed to fail so that I would see this is bigger than just books. And this is a movement that needs to be in existence, and people need to, like, just, it's so cool, because even our business cards, I'm always like writing little notes to people in, like, if we have a server, and I like scribble on the receipt, or I, like, we'll try to find scrap paper in my purse, but usually the receipt, they have to turn that in. So it's not like they get to keep, unless you do the itemized one, like the one that you sign, they have to turn that in. So they don't get to keep that one. So I'm always like trying to find, okay, what could I write on? And one day I was like, I own a business. Like, I could make the ability to write on something. And so we just made these business cards that literally, it just has our website on the bottom of the backside, which is totally blank and white. And on the other side, it says, like, it's one of the 4: you are seen, you are noticed, you are loved, or you matter. And it's so cool, because I'll randomly have people, like, from some of our local schools in the area or things, they'll like send me a picture, and I'll be like, look what I found by the water fountain. And someone just taped one of those up by the water fountain or something like that. It just makes my heart so happy, because, like, people just seeing this, or teachers telling me I put it on my desk, and so yeah, it became this movement intention. And that's these impact books. We've had sold over, like, we've sold over 200. We've made over 200 impact books, and
Wow.
just being able to, I think we're actually over, I think it's like almost like 225. And it's really cool, because since I had a friend who built me a website, because he does web design and programming, and he's very smart. But since starting with that, I think, which was in 2019, I'm actually able to see how after somebody hits submit, they land on our website. So I can see the like who came to our website from that page. And over we've had over 6,657 people show up to our website since 2019 by hitting submit. So we have almost 7,000 people who have been a part of telling someone else that they're making a difference in the lives
That's
of those girls.
amazing.
It
Mhm.
blows my mind. Like,
That's really cool. And it's like, and to know that it all started with the failing of a Kickstarter kit,
yeah, right.
essentially.
Mhm.
I know. And my friend, she was a really big part of Impact really starting and existing. She was a big cheerleader for me, and she passed away last year, in February.
Mm.
But she'd always remind me, because I had said one time, I said, she was like, Jenny, does this matter? If you like, do you need this to how do you know that this was successful or something like that? And I was like, I mean, honestly, like, one person gets to hear the impact that they're making,
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
everything. And then so then anytime I was really frustrated with things, she'd be like, remember that one person that happened a long time ago and you're just getting to tell more. So like,
Mhm.
it's that one person, remember, that's what matters. I was like, thank
Well,
you.
that's what we say
Yep,
about
you're right.
sharing stories here, is that
Yeah.
if one line of one story helps one person feel less alone, bang, we're done. We have already succeeded in so
I
many
love
ways. And
that.
so it's
Yeah.
amazing. I think that what you said about it, you needed to fail, not you needed to fail, but the Kickstarter needed to fail in
Yep.
order for you to
Yep.
see this. I think that's a really important point to bring up, is that, like, you are saying, okay, this is absolutely a God thing. God said, oh, you have to fail because then you will see the bigger picture. And I think a lot of people struggle
Mhm.
with that, to say, he didn't give me what I wanted. Why
Yep.
doesn't he want me to succeed? And it's just being able to step back and say, okay, why? Really? Why?
Yep.
Let's think about it. Let's reflect on it and say, I might not be seeing the whole picture. Of course,
Right.
when you're sitting in the middle of the suck, you're not going to feel that way. You're going to be
Right.
angry mowing, doing the monotonous meditative work and saying, God, why do you hate me? But then
Yep.
he'll say, okay, think about that question and you'll get there. And my
Yeah.
goodness, you have.
Yeah.
So what has been the most surprising thing? Because it sounds like you read all the responses, right? What's been one of the most
Mm-hmm.
surprising things that have come through one of these books in the submissions?
I think one of there's I have a couple. So one was realizing that one of them was actually an author and speaker. Um, he was it was a bigger name, and I was like, I know this name. Why do I know this name? And then the pictures, like, there was a couple of pictures that popped up as I was putting it together, and it was a stadium full of people, and I was like, wait, what is happening here?
Wow.
And so I like looked up his name. I was like, oh my gosh, that's why I know his name. Okay. So that was really, really cool. And I actually like started this tiny little like photo album just for myself of like, here's like this is like the audience that this is getting in front of. Like, this
That's
is
pretty
cool.
amazing.
Yeah. And it was interesting too to see in that one, it was a smaller group of people, like more just like a family and friends type of book, which was fascinating to consider too, because this is a person who has a massive audience,
Mm,
and the people invited to speak into his book and impact were those who were closest to him. And I thought that was really fascinating, because I think sometimes people can get really hung up on the amount of entries that they're getting in the book.
Yeah.
um, and then they forget, like, we in our emails that we send out, we're like, remember, like, every person who is submitting in this book is a
Mhm.
big deal. Like, is we
mhm.
don't need to, because it can be discouraging, especially if you know, like, I sent this out to 300 people and 50 people replied, and it's like, well, honestly, 50 of them probably didn't even get the email because they're like me and don't check their emails. And then 50, like, so anyways, I
Yeah.
think another really one of them that, Mandy, who was I meant to look this up before, but what he started an organization, right?
Mhm.
What organization did he start?
I work for Push the Rock.
Okay, yes, that one stuck out
Oh.
like so much, because the thing that always sticks out in impact books that's really cool is in every impact book, you just see the character of someone. like we've had people who have told me, like one of the first books we made, the gal told me that her husband had said, like, did you tell people what to say? Because it was
Mm.
so consistent in
Mm-hmm.
character. And she's like, no, of course I didn't tell people what to say. And then, but we hear that again and again, where people are like, so many people are saying this thing. It's like, that's one of those things that you are such a light in.
Mm.
But his was just so, my husband is doing, he's working on building an organization with soccer
Mm.
and ministry with that. And so like even just reading his story really of how these people are writing, just to see so much wow of the influence and the impact that someone had made in the really rough spaces. And I think that seeing how people, and I think he was one of them specifically, who he made room for everyone who worked for him. And
Mm.
that
Mhm.
was just to see how much more it matters that you are caring so much about each individual person.
Mhm.
um and that's what really, I mean, especially I remember that one being like, I'm gonna come back to this guy's impact book, because there were so many things. And actually saying that, there's one other
And
uh
it's funny while you're looking too, because I
yeah.
know when we were digging through emails and we caught what we could catch, but there are so many other stories out there that we couldn't
Mm-hmm.
catch. But it reminded me, like you're saying about that Hardee's manager, because there were a few people that he was like, "How did you get this person? Like, where did you find them?" And it was just,
Mhm.
it was for him, it was really special to see that somebody that we dug up from 10, 15 years ago was able to send a submission. And
Oh.
I think a lot of times when we
Mm.
compliment people too, like we say like, "Oh, you have a beautiful smile," or "You have pretty eyes," or
Mm-hmm.
"You look really nice today," and they're all very physical compliments. But I think the
Yep.
way that this book is put together, it's very intentionally asked the question of like, "What's your personality? How have you
Yep.
helped me? How have you impacted my life?"
Mm-hmm.
That's not like, "Oh, you look great today,"
Right.
like that wouldn't
Right.
make sense. So
Yeah.
it's like, "How
Yep.
have you impacted my life?" And
Mhm.
it tells about that. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just really, really cool to see it, because there were some people that submitted that knew him for, like, for me, I only knew him for a year before it. And then there were people that knew him for 25 years, and his daughter submitted one and his wife submitted one, and they all like came together and made this whole book. And, so you have people from so many different angles, so many different places, so many different lengths of time. This Hardee's manager that you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
only knew him once a week and didn't
Right.
even know him on
Mhm.
a real personal level, but that impacted his life. And,
Yeah.
it can be
And
something as
obviously
simple.
recognized he was gone.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like whatever it took to get him to that funeral, like it came from
Mhm.
him in some way recognizing you're not
Mhm.
here.
Yeah, and it could just be something as simple as holding the door open for somebody. For him, it was
Mm-hmm.
as simple as
Mhm.
giving him his Hardee's meal for the day,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And actually you even saying that, like the creation of the book, the way that it's put together is so intentional. With like the very first section is memories, and that's really just like, it's such a great way to just show someone how much they stick out in the mind of someone. Like
Mm.
like these are moments that we've had that were really special to me, and sometimes they're really simplistic moments, and sometimes they are like crazy deep and like
Mhm.
just like door closing moments where that person's life never was the same.
Mhm.
um and then having impact in the center of that, where it's like, here's the, like, impact literally means, I think it's something like the impression left, and so it's
Mhm.
like the force of the impression that's been left. Or I'm mixing that definition up a tiny bit, but just really, this is what you've created in my life that will never leave
Mhm.
me. And then helped, we put that last because I think that it's so important to read, like, here's ways that you've helped me. But a lot of people put, acts of service in some way. And
Mhm.
I was like, I want these in here because people do a lot for other people, but I also didn't want them to think that the reason that they've made any sort of impact is because of what they're doing. Because I think it's so easy for
Mhm.
us to really get hung up on
Mhm.
how, like, if I feel like I'm not showing up in other people's lives, I'm going to try to just do more, like wear
Right.
myself even more down.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I just started this year, but I started a note called Impact Quotes I Want Said About Me, because they're
Mm.
just like, doing impact books has been so eye-opening for the influence that I'm making in the lives of others. Like, because it's really interesting. One of my best friends, she really gives me a hard time about this, and it's in a good way because it really challenges me, but it's really hard to embarrass me. I'm just a like crazy love to do all the things and embarrass other people, and will do that by embarrassing myself but not caring. And she's found the way to embarrass me is to compliment me, because I don't know
Mhm.
what to do with it. Like,
Mhm.
I've had to work so hard on recognizing that it's okay to take a compliment, and I don't have to like shove something back. I don't have to, like, I can just take a compliment and absorb it. And so she'll literally go off on these like small tangents of compliments sometimes, and I just get so uncomfortable. And she was talking to her kids about that, because they're like, you can't embarrass Jenny, and she's like, oh yeah, you can, just say really nice things to her over and over again. And I was like, that's not wrong. And so that's, I've been really working intentionally on that since she's really brought that up. But she pointed out, that that's my purpose and mission, is to have other people have nice things said about them. And it's
Mhm.
one of the things that I have personally struggled so much with. So to be learning as well, like, oh, even in this, and the fascinating thing is I don't struggle with it because I feel like they're wrong in some way. I struggle with it because to me, it's this part of like, you just said this about me, and now I need to make sure that you continue to believe it. Like, so then they
Mhm.
have this struggle of, well, like, just stay, like, keep doing it right. And so like the mess up can really throw me off and be like, but they said these nice things about me and now I'm doing this. And so like
Mhm.
it's
You
just
Yeah.
a
feel like
really
you have to.
interesting thing that I carry
Right.
sometimes.
You
Yeah,
have to live up to the expectation that they're putting on you.
exactly what I was thinking.
Exactly. Yes. My mom gave my dad an impact book for his retirement. He retired after working 25 years, and she gave him an impact book, and he was like, I'm going to have to read this later. When he got it. And someone was like, one of the people there were like, oh, read the memory from us, it's really funny. Like, it's not, and it was a funny, but he like opens it and he starts to read it out loud and just can't even get through the first sentence because he just chokes up. And he's like,
Mm.
he kind of struggled through it, and just, it's fascinating to see. Another friend of mine, though, she got it, and she just sat and read it right away, like
Mm.
read and just, was just absorbing it. And the interesting thing is learning, because some people have shared like their thought processes
Mm.
behind having received it, and some people have shared like how it's brought things to light that they didn't realize. Like, one of my friends said she didn't realize how much she felt like some of them were lies. Like, she felt like people were seeing a fake version of her, and we were like,
Mhm.
actually, you're seeing a fake version of yourself, because this
Mhm.
Mhm.
is you. and
Mhm.
and being able to, and I know one of my friends, who, it's one of my favorite reels that we have on the Instagram, on our Instagram account, with reactions, is he's reading it and he's laughing and he's sobbing, and he's like, it's in between, like he's everywhere, because it's just like, he was going through a really dark space in life, and his now wife was like, I want to make this, I think his
Mm.
wife and one of his friends was like, we want to make this for him. And they just, he was reading it and he's like, there's so many nice things in here.
Mhm.
And I think that that's just to recognize, so if I got one, I think it would be, I'm a collector of all the things. Like, people who give me nice cards and do, like, I keep all of these things, which is hilarious, because like, me saying like, I have these expectations, but then at the same time I'll refer back to some of these cards and stuff in times when I'm really struggling with stuff. And it was
Mhm.
really
Mm.
interesting, because there was actually one season in late 2017 where I got, again and again and again, people would like write these random notes. I went to this conference, and a gal who's now a good friend of mine, but we like talked a tiny bit at the conference. And then she wrote me a note at the end of the conference and she wrote little handwritten cards for a few of the people she'd met and just handed them out. And that act in itself, like, we're friends now because I had
Mhm.
met her and she was really cool. But then like she showed me like, hey, I actually really like, I value you, you know,
Mhm.
and she had written something about you're a light. And then I had another friend who wrote a card and talked about being a light. And then another friend who wrote a letter and talked about being a light. And I was like, okay, this is something that I need to
Mhm.
recognize and like
Uh-huh.
step into, you know, not like own it, where I'm
Right.
Mhm.
doing it and I need to recognize I'm doing it. And
Mhm.
Well,
so
it
I
sounds
think
like
that
you're compiling your own little impact book with all of these
I
things
know.
along the way, more like a scrapbook, and which in a way
Yeah.
is more organic to
Yeah.
the mission, and you wanna put that mission out there, and it's coming back to
Hmm.
you in the most beautiful little breadcrumb type of way.
Mhm.
Yes. One of my best friend's little girls, she has 5 siblings, and we were staying with them for a little while, and she went around this last like October. She's such a gift giver. She went around this last October and asked all the other kids, what's your favorite thing about Jenny? And she
Mhm.
wrote down this little piece on this little notebook piece of paper. There's ten favorite things about Jenny, and then a couple extra things from each of the kids. And I was
Aw.
like my heart just melted because kids are so honest. Like, they're
Mhm.
not going to say
Mhm.
something
Yeah.
and that is not true. And so just to read that and be like, these are the ways I want to be known, and to know that
Mhm.
Mhm.
children are seeing me that way is
Yeah.
amazing. And I
Yeah.
think that it's so important to, like, even for me, to recognize that even though there are all the things that we do and we feel like how we need to show up to make people, like, we can walk around with all these masks so that we can have people feel like we are a certain way, but the things that people remember about us are, you know, the way that we hold space for them,
Mhm.
and the way that we respond when they are struggling, and the way that we just like show them that they matter to us. And it has so
Mhm.
much less to do with the they play a part, but it has so much less to do with what we do for them or what we buy for them or what
Mhm.
we, you know, those kinds of things, and so
Mhm.
much more to do with who we tell them they are, who we call out
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
them.
Having that tangible piece, I'm sure, is such a unique reminder because we can give compliments and we
Hmm.
can twist them in our heads and we can say, well, this is what they really meant, or they just saw me on a good day. But having that tangible reminder, we believe the things that we say about ourselves, and
Yep.
sometimes we have nothing to say about ourselves. And so being
Yep.
able to flip through and have tab on that favorite page, like this is the page that makes me feel powerful, or this is the page that reminds me that my life is worth living, being able to have that in their home is
Yeah.
such a unique gift, and literally a gift from someone
Yeah.
that they can use it as a coping skill even, and just
Hmm.
support themselves on days that they feel like they need that light.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, Kristen, too, is what I was gonna say is it doesn't have to be huge. Like, the
Mm,
impact book is really nice and it's beautiful. I absolutely highly recommend it to anybody. But the note that you got from your friend's kids is a simple
Hmm.
little notebook piece of paper. So it doesn't cost
Yeah.
a lot of money to tell somebody how much
mhm,
they've impacted your life.
Yeah.
And, it's really just opening yourself up, being vulnerable and being willing to share that, hey, you impacted my life, and letting them know. And I think for me, so I'm an Enneagram 1, it's really hard for me to give compliments because I'm such a perfectionist. Like, if it's
Hmm.
not perfect, it's not perfect, like, it doesn't need a
mhm,
compliment. So
Yep.
I work on giving compliments. So just you reminding us in this season, like, it's a simple note. It's a simple text message. It's a simple
Hmm.
piece of paper that you write and give them to somebody. And people keep that. Like, I have a sticky note right here on my computer that is from somebody that's very encouraging that I keep here.
Hmm.
And I had a
Yep.
note on my desk for 2 years from on a post-it note from somebody that wrote to
mhm,
me, and it was on my desk, and it doesn't have to be huge. So,
Right. And
yeah.
I think that's what being able to, in with impact, recognizing that it's so much more about a movement. We'll talk pretty frequently about on our social medias about, like, we genuinely, like, yes, we'd love for you to buy stuff from our store, but we don't care about that as much as we care about giving you ideas on ways to say
mm,
you matter to
Absolutely.
me. or here's, and even doing like, because we've done a couple reels with like just card prompts, because I know people, like I've had people who have said, I don't know what to write in a card.
Mhm.
And it's just even, and this year actually I've resolved to do for every birthday, I've always been the person who writes a lot in cards, and just and every birthday this year I decided I'm just going to do like a mini impact book for every person
Mm.
for the last year. And so like that's a really easy and great way to just be able to tell people and give them something that they can hold on to, where now they open up that card and it says my favorite memory with you this last year, the way you impacted me in the last year, and the way you helped me in the last year. And like I just kind of see, I'm really excited to, like, I want my son who's 8 and my son who, I mean, he's 23, but obviously he'll be around for a long time. But just have this compilation of cards from me that just like you'll be able to go through the years and see like
Mhm.
building like this mini impact book compilation library
Sure.
really. And
Mhm.
I,
Right.
it's just kind of something I'm like, oh, I want people to have that from
Yeah.
me.
Which is amazing because it's almost like a photo album, but with words.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
words are
Yes.
powerful, and
Yep.
words impact people literally.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're talking
Yeah.
about. So I love that idea. That's a really, really cool idea.
Yeah.
The fact
Mhm.
that we connected, you know, halfway across the country, and
Mm-hmm.
just that, and like the impact that I know that book had on the person that I gave it to, and just seeing your social media posts and just your story and your life and everything, it's like, my gosh, how would you have ever thought that you would meet, you know, little old Mandy over here, like in Pennsylvania? It's like, that's like, it is a bigger impact. And I think
Yeah.
we live in a world right now that is very consumer oriented, and it's very
Mm-hmm.
like big money. You hear about like Elon Musk and SpaceX and like all these
Yeah.
huge companies. That's like, you want to be that in a way, but it's like
Yeah.
that, it, like you said, that impact is for different people for different reasons. Like your
Yeah.
impact is for the specific people that you are impacting, and that's what God calls us to do. It's just like
Yeah.
impact and help and be with those that are around us, that he is giving us that assignment to be with.
Yeah.
And we can't help everybody, we just can't. And so
Mhm.
Right.
you do what you can. But the fact that it's, like you said, you're shipping to Australia, and before you know it, you'll be shipping all over Europe and down in South America.
Yeah.
And it's like, you need to have a good foundation. So
Mm-hmm.
from what you're sharing, it just sounds like God is like providing that
Yeah.
firm foundation, the
Yep.
song, and like really
Yep.
building that strong, so that when it's like, here's some blessings, let me just dump this bucket on you, you're like, oh,
Yep.
okay, I'm prepared, instead of
Mhm.
drowning in the water that is getting poured on you, and
Right.
in those blessings too. So I
Yeah.
think that's really lovely.
And I love the way you put that, of like God's building the firm foundation, because I think it's so easy to see the miracle as the viral or the
Mhm.
Mhm.
instantaneous success,
Mhm.
instead of the miracle of God really creating a really solid ground for
Yeah.
Mhm.
success. And
Mhm.
I think that's a good thing to remember in slow
Mhm.
growth.
That slow growth process.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, you can pull a weed with shallow roots out real
Yep.
easy, but it looks huge. And
Yep.
that's
Mhm.
exactly what a viral video is. It's up and
Yeah.
gone. And then
Yep.
that's it.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
Mhm.
there's nothing sustainable to it. There's not a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
of eternal, satisfaction or
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
impact that's going out with a
Yeah.
viral video. It's just going to make you laugh
Mhm.
for a couple seconds, and then 2 weeks
Right.
later, you're going to be like, can you stop watching that? I've seen it 100 times. It's annoying.
Yes.
That
So
Or
same
your
sound
kids
clip
stop
is getting
asking you
really
to sing
tedious.
the song that is over and over again. Like, it's corn. I sang that so much for a little while. And there's
It's
kids in our
Baby
church who
Shark
was like,
or
can you
something.
stop?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Well, I have a list. When you first started talking, I had a little list. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm going to ask about that. I'm going to ask about that. I'm going to ask about that. So I think we need a part 2. Guys,
I'm
like,
down.
there's so many things that I want to dig into your head and your heart about. Like specifically like being a pastor's wife, like you're interested in music, your photo business, being a mom, the adoption process, adopting a teenager, all this stuff. We can't even brush the surface right now because we'll be
Mm-hmm.
here quite literally for years. But
I told you before we started, if you get me talking, it will be hours.
which is why, this has been a really just wonderful conversation. I think our listeners are really going to benefit from hearing just the tiniest little ways that they can change someone's life just with using a couple of positive words.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So As we wrap up, I want to ask you. I honestly have no clue what you're going to say to this question, but I want to ask you about the song that we're going to add to our playlist. A song that
Yes.
either describes you in your impact book journey, something that pulls you out of one of those negative moods where you really feel like you do need your own little impact book. So, what's a song that would help our listeners get to know you a little bit better? And honestly, I've got not a clue, so I'm so curious.
We're always like bracing ourselves. So we don't know what song you're going to pick either. So like it's
Yeah.
like in the recording, we're like, this could be off the wall and it could be super predictable. Like you just never know.
Yeah. I think the one that has been over and over and over again right now in this season I'm in is by an artist, Benjamin William Hastings.
Yeah.
There's actually two songs that came to mind, and the funny thing is, the first one is called Seasons by Hillsong, and it's sung by him. Actually, he's the one who leads that. But the one that's been over and over and over again that I would say add to the playlist is called Homeward by him on his newest album. And there's a line specifically, I'm trying to pull up the lyrics, in the second chorus, or in the second verse, excuse me, where it says, "I've asked you more than once to hurry up the plans, but what if where you want me is exactly where I am? Because what I've learned from waiting is that waiting never lasts. You didn't bring me this far just to bring me back. You're too good for that." And that has been on repeat for me because our personal life is upside down right now and has been for over a year. And just that, like, just seeing like personal life, and then we have impact, and we have just so many things that God is just knitting something so incredible together, and recognizing that, I might think that we're ready. I might think that impact is ready to blow up. I might think that our things in our personal life are like, we should be there already. But there's just so many. I recognize that God is moving and working in very specific ways, and he doesn't forget about me. And he, it says, like the word says, that he works all things together for the good of those who love him. And I know that I'm passionately pursuing him and passionately falling more and more in love with him. And so the way that he is working all of these stories, also recognizing that that means the good of all of those who love him. Like, it's not just like, he's not just focused on me in this story. Like this story is a part of other people's stories. And so recognizing, okay, there's purpose in this space and in this season. And just really growing from that.
Thank you so much for sharing. We are so grateful to get to meet you and to just
Absolutely.
to chat with you this little bit. And, I sent Kristen a message and I was like, we're going to be here for hours if we don't find a way to like wrap this up, because it's just, there's so much to talk about, like Kristen said. So we're just really grateful for you sharing and just sharing more about the business and the behind the scenes of the impact book and all of that. So your information and how people can find you will be in the show notes, and on YouTube it'll be in the description, so anybody can click and find you and purchase their own impact book and tell somebody that they matter in their life and really make a difference in the world and just be a part of this movement that you are so kindly and graciously and gently and excitedly starting. So we just thank you so much for your time and really I've just enjoyed it. And so yeah.
Me too. Thank you both so much for giving me this space to be able to speak and just talk about it. And can I recommend one book?
Sure, absolutely.
There's a book called The Go-Giver. It's by who is it by? I'm actually reading it again because it's just so incredibly good. It's called The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and John David Mann. And it's a really short, quick book, but it's incredible. And I highly recommend it for just really anyone who's trying to see anything succeed, really.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies, so much. This is an incredible opportunity, and I'm really grateful for what you two are doing and the way that you are making room for people to speak and share. And it makes a huge difference. I mean, not only does it feel like being asked to be on a podcast in itself is like, oh wow, like you feel like I have something to share and say. So that makes room in itself. But then also to just like, to be so affirming and say, you know, what the space that you are making for someone to encourage others, and then the encouraging that others are going to experience is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you for doing the hard work that goes behind creating a podcast.
Hey, it's so much fun. These conversations need to happen, and I feel so happy that I know you now.
Same. I love it. Awesome. Thank you.